How does one person manage all that? Running a rocket company, a car company, neurotech, internet satellites, a social media platform,
Yep.
all at the same time.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Like, what's the secret sauce?
Exactly. So today we're going to dive into a recent interview with Elon Musk.
Right.
And our mission really is to pull out the key insights. What makes him tick, his core ideas about work, motivation, the future.
Think of it as getting the essential download on the thinking behind these huge world-changing projects.
A shortcut to understanding what's driving things like Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, Starlink, X, the whole lot.
And it's fascinating just looking at that list. I mean, space, cars, brains, internet, communication.
Mhm.
Are there common threads in how he actually tackles the problems in such different areas?
Well, that's a great starting point. One thing that definitely comes through is how he manages his time and focus across everything.
Right. He talks about needing to be where he's most needed, essentially.
Yeah, focusing on the biggest impact, solving the right problems. It's not just about, those crazy 80 or 100-hour work weeks we hear about.
It's strategic. It seems like he looks for the bottlenecks, right? The fundamental things holding progress back.
Like with SpaceX.
Exactly. Traditional rockets were just too expensive, too slow. That was the bottleneck he went after. So the hours are intense, sure, but it's about where that effort goes.
Okay, so strategic effort. But what actually fuels that kind of, dedication?
He talks a lot about belief, a really deep belief in what he's doing.
So what's more than just business?
It sounds like it. This idea of creating the future he wants to see, specifically making life multiplanetary and pushing hard on sustainable energy, those seem to be the real drivers.
Almost like a personal mission then, beyond just profit.
Yeah, it has that feel. Like these huge, almost civilization-level goals are the things that keep him going through all the inevitable setbacks and challenges.
Okay, let's talk about one of those big goals, SpaceX and Mars.
hmm
You mentioned a timeline.
He did, sort of tentatively. Maybe humans walking on Mars in the late 2020s, if they get lucky.
If they get lucky. So lots of caveats there.
Oh, absolutely. He's pretty clear about the huge challenges. Getting Starship working reliably for cargo is one thing, but sending people, that's a whole other level of testing and safety required.
And Starship is the key piece there.
It really is. The big deal with Starship is the full reusability. Landing the booster and the ship itself, that's what could finally make trips to Mars, economically feasible. It changes the game completely compared to old rockets.
But he's still cautious about the human element.
Very. He doesn't sugarcoat the risks of sending people to another planet and keeping them alive there.
And the why behind it all? Why Mars?
He frames it in pretty profound terms, actually. It's about preserving consciousness, like a backup plan for humanity, just in case something happens to Earth.
A backup plan. Wow.
Yeah, that and, the basic human drive to explore, to push boundaries.
So it's this mix of practical, long-term survival thinking and maybe a more philosophical drive.
Exactly. It elevates the whole Mars project beyond just engineering. It ties into this really big picture view of humanity's place in the cosmos.
Okay, shifting gears a bit, let's talk AI. Another technology with massive potential, but also risks. He's involved with XAI now.
Yes, XAI. The goal there seems to be understanding AI, developing it safely. He definitely sees it as a double-edged sword.
Yeah, so.
Well, huge potential for good, right? Accelerating science, medicine, education, amazing possibilities, but
Yep.
also big risks, misuse, loss of control, the things people worry about. He seems quite concerned about that side.
So he's calling for caution, regulations.
Yeah, he stresses the need for regulations for ethical guidelines right from the start. It's not about stopping AI, more about steering it carefully, guiding it.
And his prediction for AGI, artificial general intelligence. When does he think that might happen?
This is where it gets pretty startling. He suggests maybe in the next 5 to 10 years, possibly even sooner.
5 years. That
Yeah.
seems incredibly fast.
It does. He points to the exponential progress we're seeing. Things are moving so quickly. And because of that, he says we need to be, extremely serious about how we approach it.
That timeline really puts the pressure on getting the safety and ethics right, doesn't it?
Absolutely. If he's even close to right, AGI would be, well, a turning point for humanity. We need to have thought very carefully about the implications.
Okay, let's switch to Tesla. Obviously, it's shaken up the car industry, but what's the focus now?
Autonomy is a huge one. Full self-driving. He sees that as a complete game changer for transportation.
Beyond just making driving easier?
Oh, yeah. Think logistics, safety improvements, accessibility. It could fundamentally change how we move around. But it's not just about cars. even electric ones.
Right, there's the energy side too.
Exactly. Solar, batteries. Tesla's mission is broader. It's framed as accelerating the whole world's shift to sustainable energy. The cars are a big part of that, but not the only part.
So cars, autonomy, and the whole energy infrastructure.
Mm-hmm. It's about tackling that reliance on fossil fuels on multiple fronts.
What about some of the, let's say, wilder ideas, like the Boring Company or that flamethrower?
Right. Well, the Boring Company came out of frustration with LA traffic, apparently. Just identifying a problem and thinking, okay, what's a different way to solve this? Even if it sounds a bit out there at
So
first.
tunnels under cities.
Yeah. And the flamethrower, he's pretty much said that was, mostly just for fun. A bit of a gag.
But even the fun stuff, maybe it shows something about the approach.
I think it does. It's that willingness to identify something broken or just annoying and then brainstorm solutions without being limited by how things are normally done. Even if the idea seems a bit unconventional or, well, like a flamethrower.
So how does he actually do all this? What does his day look like?
From what's been reported, it sounds incredibly scheduled, packed, lots of meetings, engineering reviews, problem-solving sessions.
And heavily focused on the technical side.
Apparently so. He tries to spend, at least 80% of his time on engineering and design, really getting into the nuts and bolts.
Which is pretty unusual for a CEO running one company, let alone 5 or 6.
It really is. It shows, I think, a deep commitment to the technical fundamentals. He's not just setting strategy from afar, he's deeply involved in making sure the engineering is right.
Does he ever switch off? Is there any downtime?
It seems pretty limited, as you'd expect, but he does mention things like reading, movies, spending time with his kids when he can.
Any particular interests?
He's known to be a big science fiction fan, Douglas Adams, Isaac Asimov, people like that.
That kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Given the scale of his ambitions.
Yeah, I mean, those authors often grapple with big questions about humanity, technology, the future, themes that definitely echo in his own projects.
So finally, any advice from him on pursuing meaningful work? Things that matter.
Yeah, he touches on a few key things. One is really thinking hard about what matters personally, but also globally.
Finding that purpose we talked about earlier.
Right, and embracing failure, seeing it not as the end, but just part of the process, especially when you're trying new, difficult things.
That's crucial for innovation, I suppose.
Definitely. And the last one is about people surrounding yourself with good people who challenge you and encourage you to grow. Pretty solid advice, really.
Yeah, those are fundamental principles. So, wrapping this up, what are the main takeaways from this deep dive?
Well, we've seen this intense focus on solving the right problems, right?
And being where he's most needed.
Yeah, fueled by this deep belief in these really big, long-term goals like multiplanetary life, sustainable energy.
And a willingness to tackle enormous challenges, whether it's reusable rockets or AI safety or self-driving cars.
Exactly, like a kind of pragmatic boldness, maybe. Plus, that relentless work ethic, but driven by that sense of purpose.
Hopefully exploring this gives you, our listeners, a clearer picture of the thinking behind the headlines.
And maybe how these different ventures, Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, they aren't necessarily separate silos. They seem interconnected, maybe pieces of a much larger, integrated vision for the future.
That's a great point. It all seems to point towards this grander strategy. So on that note, here's something to think about. Considering Musk's focus on tackling these fundamental global-scale problems, what big, seemingly intractable issue facing us today do you think deserves that same kind of audacious, innovative thinking right now?
That's a good one to ponder.
Definitely something to chew on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Keep that curiosity going.